Good afternoon, everyone. This is episode 8 of the Entertainment Room, and we've got excellent news because Jacob Ottaway has returned to us.
I'm not dead and they can't get rid of me that easily. I've returned from my emergency work call out to come and talk on the Entertainment Room podcast.
And he'll never leave again. And this week we are joined by Ruby Barry, who is a drama student at the university.
Hello, Jess can't get rid of me either.
We're both going to be here permanently.
Yeah.
You don't know any other guests. You know, we are just the routine guests.
HK and Rhiannon will never step foot in here again.
Okay, I think Macaulay's too good to sacrifice, but yeah. So, this week we're going to start in the world of television. And we're going to start with a trailer. A trailer's come out for Watchmen. Jess is very excited about this. Why?
Well, because I didn't like the film, but the graphic novel is amazing. And this is quite an interesting concept they're going with here. Apparently the television show, which we saw a trailer for last week, it was a teaser trailer. We didn't see much about it, but it's going to be set after the events of the graphic novel, but it's going to keep everything that happened in the graphic novel canon. And from the sounds of it, they're sticking quite close to the source material. And, you know, HBO's got quite a good streak going on here with its TV shows, so this should be interesting.
Now, speaking of HBO, we need to point out that from here, spoilers, lots of spoilers, all the spoilers. If you don't want spoilers for Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 5, go away and come back in about 10-15 minutes' time. So, where do we start with Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 5?
Well, where we left off last episode, when it was me and Mac, we were just about... we were waiting for the next episode, and we were like, well, we'll tell you next week whether we enjoyed it or whether we're giving up on the show. And I think we're on split opinions here with me and Ruby. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode.
I don't know. I've just been thinking about the old series and how it could never disappoint me. And just, I feel like I'm grabbing onto the really, really good things that are happening this season. But I never had to do that in old series. It was just brilliant throughout. And
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just annoyed that the whole... Why did Jamie and Brienne get together? Was it for fan service? If so, that's dumb.
Yeah, well, quite a few things have been announced since the last episode. We have heard that apparently it was the writer's choice to have 8 episodes for season 7 and 6 episodes for season 8. Initially, we all thought it was the studio's fault, like putting pressure on them, but no, actually it was the writer's decision. They said they could finish the show in, how many episodes is that? In 14 episodes, and it has not gone down to plan. I think they have shot themselves in the foot doing that. I was happy with all the plot points that happened. Daenerys going mad, it was something that they've been hinting to in the book, and I've been so looking forward to it happening. The only problem is because they've had such a short, limited number of episodes left, we've had no build up to that at all. She was fine 1 minute, then the next minute she was like absolute cuckoo and committing mass genocide.
Yeah, I feel like with old seasons it was able to slowly build up to things and have really dedicated moments to character development, but now this whole season is just set pieces sort of pieced together with little moments of characters where they don't even speak like humans to each other. They just sort of say one-liners and then they look into the distance and then it's the next piece.
For this season, I'm going to have to give props to the actors, to the directors, to the people who build the sets, to people who do the makeup, people who do all the special effects, and especially to Ramin Djawadi, who does the score.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to have to give it a 10 out of 10 to absolutely everybody involved in this, apart from the writers.
Apart from the writers, yeah, D&D can...
had decent writing, this would have been the best this would have been the best way to finish this TV show, because it was absolutely, you know, it's so well filmed. The music has been absolutely gorgeous. I really want to go and see the guy doing the score live. I'm hoping he brings the Game of Thrones concert experience to the UK. The actors have been absolutely phenomenal. Even actors that in the past people have said they don't like their acting, Emilia Clarke especially.
Yeah, I was always, throughout watching it, I was always the person who was like, Emilia Clarke is not a good actor at all. I mean, I'm a drama student, so I'm really, really picky with acting because I know the potential of other great actors, and for actresses to get such big roles and then be disappointing is really irritating. but she just like blew me away this season.
Yeah, she really pulled through. And from the interviews they've been having with her, I kind of realised that she knows the character out of everybody more. Like the way she was trying to describe the transition, she was just saying it was just pure grief. Daenerys has lost absolutely everything. The only thing she hasn't lost is her army and her one remaining dragon. And basically she snaps. The fact that people are saying it was out of character for her to snap, but I don't think people understand what the Targaryen madness is, because Viserys, her brother, was also a completely decent guy to begin with. That's why she names her dragon after him. He was a really nice and caring brother. He looked after Daenerys. He raised her. But the years of being bullied by the people in Essos and being nicknamed the Beggar King and having to sell his mother's crown, it kind of all fell onto him, and in the end he snapped and he became the person that we know him and hate in season 1.
Yeah.
Even though I kind of miss him because I want to see his face.
Well, the actor was really hot, which helps a lot. It does help a lot.
And her father was the same. Her father started off as this really good king, and people were like, this guy's amazing. He's going to make the realm a better place. And I'm a little bit skeptical. I can't really remember much from his backstory in the book, but I think he gets kidnapped at one point and held hostage. And that happened for a year before he was rescued by Barristan Selmy, and that was the point where he was never the same again because he had snapped. So it's the Targaryen madness. It doesn't matter what they were like before. It's two sides of one coin. It flips, and you see what happens. It doesn't have to start from the beginning, but at one point they will snap. It's they're born from incest.
I think that the reason that it stems from all this is that they should have had at least one more season building up to this, and to have the characters slowly because that would have been really interesting to see Jon and Tyrion, not over the space of just 2 episodes, but the space of a whole season, slowly realise, oh no, this is because they put so much. I mean, Tyrion is
Tyrion's just been reduced to having his job role of just walking across the battlefield looking sad.
At stuff, yeah.
Even in the trailer for the next episode, that's exactly what he's doing, looking at the battlefield looking sad.
Yeah. Old season Tyrion would never make dumb decisions like this.
I was thinking, because her father saw enemies in every person, like he was seeing them in the shadows. He wanted to burn the people at King's Landing, so he thought they were all his enemy. I thought, had they played on that kind of thing with Daenerys, and did there something like in season 1 where everybody's going behind each other's backs, if we'd had that slow build-up of people going behind her back and her like getting really paranoid about this, rather than her just accusing Tyrion of not doing his job properly, which he hasn't been.
No, he deserves that. Really, I'm surprised he hasn't been let go yet. Because really, Dany and Tyrion have only known each other like not half the time that they should. If she decides, oh, I'm just going to keep you here because you're a really good friend. No. Varys was like burned immediately when he made a mistake. But you said that he was going to poison Dany, which I didn't even clock on to. Yeah, neither
did I. I saw it on Twitter when someone was like, hold on a minute, did Varys try and poison Daenerys? And he did, because he had a girl came in and he was like, how did it go? And she was like, she's not eating. He was like, okay, then we'll try again next time, go back to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And even now, I'm not really sure if he was trying to poison her, but I think
that would have been
it's a bit of an odd conversation. I'm trying to think of what else they would have been trying to do other than spy on her.
Social media have been saying it is definitely a poisoning, and I can completely see that. I just want to bring it back quickly to obviously the character development of Daenerys. And I think that although, yes, it's been very rushed, if we look at the bigger picture of things, I think ever since, oh Christ, I've forgotten his name, ever since he died in the Battle of Winterfell, Jorah died at the Battle of Winterfell, this has slowly been coming. Because, Jorah was essentially, basically the Rock. Jorah was essentially keeping her mental health in check and keeping, her character in check. After that, after losing him, there was no other way she was going to go other than the Mad Queen, I feel.
Yeah.
Because Jorah meant a lot more to her than obviously she let on. So I feel that once she lost Jorah, this was definitely coming. But as you guys have said, the Mad Queen story, spot on. Okay, yes, there's flaws, but I'll come on to that in a little bit. But the Mad Queen is spot on. The only way they could have gone and done it And yes, the character development's been rushed, but I feel that actually, when you look back at sort of Daenerys through the 7 seasons, have a sit down, a bit of a think about it, and particularly earlier on this season, I feel that, okay, yes, writing not great, but I'd say acceptable.
Well, Jacob actually watched all the series right before season 8 came on. He said, "I'm going to start Game of Thrones." So I was like, "Good luck with that." But no, within about 3 weeks, you watched them all.
I proved you wrong. Yeah, watched them in
That's
space
pretty
for a month.
impressive.
Yeah, so if anyone's going to look back on what happened in the past series, Jacob's got the most recent memory of what happened. I have been watching a few clips of what she was like, and I suddenly realised, actually, yeah, because she kept on proposing, burning all her enemies alive without trial, crucifying all the masters, even though she doesn't know who they are, or she gets, I can't remember his name, the guy she ends up proposing to in Marine.
Is this Dario Naharis?
No, the other guy.
The really annoying guy.
Yeah, he's got quite a name that's quite hard to pronounce, but
Danny's hot boy number 5.
Yeah, he comes up to Daenerys and he was like, "Can I please give my father a decent burial? He was a good man. Yes, he owned slaves, but he tried his best to treat them well." Which kind of like showed her that she just looks at things through a black and white perspective. And it was always Barristan, Selmy and Jorah who would advise her not to be so ruthless, because she wanted people to love her as well as fear her. And she would listen to them, but now she doesn't have those counsellors.
Yeah, I don't know though, because there's a difference between her slowly being ruthless to her enemies, which was built up, but there's a big difference between her being unnecessarily ruthless to people who have wronged her and innocent civilians. And I feel like that snap from there to being on Drogon looking over the city, and Emilia's acting in that was phenomenal, but I feel like the snap was too quick, and it for me it didn't ring true to Dany, because I feel like if she was going to start being ruthless to innocent civilians, it would be over time.
Yeah, I
like
think
her father was when he became king.
Or I think something should have happened to her, like maybe Rhaegal should have been shot down during the attack on King's Landing. When the bells ring, a stray scorpion decides to shoot him while they have got the chance. Or maybe she looks down, she sees the people like shouting at her and throwing things, and she just kind of goes, "You know what?"
What blows my mind is they've got some of the best writers in the world on this Game of Thrones series, and somehow you have come up with all the best ideas that were after we've been talking that they have just had no, and it blows my mind.
The problem is George told the writers how the books would end, so I think the fact that Dany's snapping and whatever will happen in the next episode is actually what will happen in the book. So that wasn't even the writers coming up with that. This is George's arc for Dany, so they don't even have that to fall back on as credit.
I was going to say as well, I mean, I understand obviously that maybe they should have had something before the mad snap, to actually justify her doing that. But actually I feel that the fact that she just sits there and done it, and that shot where it's all silent and she's on top of the dragon, I feel that reinforces just how mad she is. There's been no one this mad since the Mad King. And I feel that obviously over the 7 seasons, once again, okay, yes, maybe they should have had more to that shot, but I feel that actually the fact that it's just over almost nothing, and almost just from her sitting there thinking of all the hardships she's gone through recently whilst atop the dragon, I feel that just shows just how mad she is.
Well, you had mad Cersei blowing up half of King's Landing, but I feel like that wasn't really madness. That was more like, revenge because the way they treated her. And what did you guys think of Cersei's death?
I still don't know what I think about it.
I love Cersei. I really do.
She is the most phenomenal thing that's happened to a character that's happened to TV in years.
Yeah. She, her, even in the books, the way George has written her, because I have this thing where a lot of male writers don't write women very well, but George does it really well.
Yeah.
The way, especially because you're in Cersei's head, during her chapters, the way she's written and the grief you feel for with her for her children and stuff, and how she's desperate to protect Tommen.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot of articles that are complaining about how D&D have been portraying, Dany and stuff in the final season, and how she snaps, and how that's bad for the portrayal of women characters on TV. But bring it on.
Yeah,
I want really selfish, horrible, complex female characters.
Yeah, I don't want women knitting by the fire,
No.
like, as Lionel Mormont would put it.
Yeah.
I love the way George and both the writers of the show write the women in this. I think it's brilliant. And I loved Cersei's death because George has always said he writes his characters not in a black and white way. So you don't have like moustache twirling villains or like pure heroes. Cersei's quite sympathetic, and what she's been through in the past, you can kind of feel sorry for her, especially when she realizes that she's going to die and she's pregnant with her next child, and she just wants to protect that kid.
Yeah.
I felt like her dying with her loved one was probably it was unexpected as well. I was expecting them to give her a death like we had for Joffrey, but she's not Joffrey because there is some sympathy towards her, and she has got a good side to her when it comes to her children, whereas Joffrey was just like straight up ruthless and deserved everything he got. Same with Ramsay.
I will say as well, I mean, yes, I completely love the writing of the females in the programme. Speaking of this particular episode, though, The Bells, it's got the lowest ever score on Rotten Tomatoes for a Game of Thrones episode, 47%.
See, I think that's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
Very
Because I
harsh.
thought the first episode of this season was awful, and the last
was really
the last episode before this one was terrible. If I was going to rate it, I would put this one would be my second favourite. My first favourite would be the second episode where they're preparing for the Battle of
That
Winterfell.
was yeah.
And my least favourites would be the first one and the last one because they were filler and the writing was awful because there was not much happening, so they had to focus on the character development, and because there's not much character development there was nothing happening.
The last episode, was it The Last of the Starks?
Yeah.
Was the point where I really, really got upset with, because obviously we've been watching this show for years, and I had so much problems with the Jaime Brienne thing and the fact that they had sex, but then if they hadn't have had sex and they had had a platonic relationship, which I think George R.R. Martin was going for anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants them to have sex. And if they'd have had a platonic with maybe like hints of a romance, but then Jaime had gone back to Cersei, that would have been brilliant.
Yeah, because Cersei's
Brilliant.
always been the love of his life.
Exactly.
We're supposed to be disgusted by it because they're brother and sister, but, George in his writing, he makes you kind of, like, root for them towards the end. You're like, because Jaime joined the Kingsguard just to be near Cersei. He's, like, loved her all his life, and then he eventually goes back to her to make sure she doesn't die alone or doesn't die at all. He wants to try and save her.
It's beautifully tragic in like a Greek tragedy sense.
One thing I would have changed about Cersei's death would be Jaime revealing to her that Tyrion was the one that tried to save her, just so we get that moment of revelation to her, where she realizes that Tyrion has been telling the truth and he does generally want to save her.
That would have been... you see, how have they got $1 million writers and you just come up with the most brilliant ideas?
To be honest, George probably wouldn't write it like that either, because there's a lot of stuff that George does leave out, because, he wants you to see the characters in a certain way, and I think he would have also left that out.
I'm a very simplistic man. I only had one issue with the episode. Before I say that, I will point out on Rotten Tomatoes, every episode of this season has got a lower rating than the one that predecessed it. So apparently the Winterfell episode, the one that you were saying you quite dislike, is the best of the series so far.
Yeah, see, I think the problem is people don't rate the episodes individually. I think they've been rating the series overall, and they go on and review it based on their built-up anger over watching the season as a whole, when you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to review the episode as a standalone.
But I will just come back to obviously my thought on the episode itself, because I've not outlined that clearly. I'm a very simplistic man, and I really enjoyed just the action, things like that. Cinematography I was saying earlier, the shot with the white horse, things like that. Absolutely gorgeous. The only issue I have, and it's not really an issue for me as such, but I've heard a lot of people say it's an issue, it's just looking into sort of, I hate saying this term, but plot armour. Looking into that. How did all the scorpions disappear so quickly?
Yeah.
How did Arya not get burnt by a dragon when she was basically running through the city with the crowds? I feel that's the only issue. But then again, it doesn't need to be overly realistic writing. There can be those elements of, well, why did that happen? Because, it's really enjoyable, real action. I couldn't take my eyes off that. I don't think I could say that about any of the other episodes of the season so far. I couldn't take my eyes off it. So I feel that overall people have been harsh with it. Maybe plot armor's an issue, but I don't really care about that, to be honest.
So what do we think's going to happen next episode?
Well, I haven't read any spoilers until yesterday, when that YouTube comment I will hate forever.
Yeah,
I
'cause
accidentally saw a spoiler, but I don't know the rest.
in case people don't know this, to watch out on Twitter at the moment, because there was a leak. Well, there was loads of leaks floating around before the series was released, but because there were so many, you don't know which one's the real one. I read one where Sansa dies in episode 1 because Winterfell collapses. Arya and Jon meet, and the first thing Jon says to her was like, "I see you stuck them with the pointy end," and I thought, you know what, this sounds like fan fiction, and so I stopped reading. But there was another one I read, which I didn't even realise until a friend pointed it out to me, that that this one is actually real. And when I found it at the end and read it through, and I was like, Jesus, this person actually knew what was going to happen, because everything that they listed has actually happened in the order that they listed it in. So I actually know how it ends, because it's been true so far, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be true in the last episode.
Do you know any spoilers, Jacob?
I've managed to avoid them. I mean, what I think will happen, and I excuse me, I think I might be wrong. I reckon Arya has got to kill Daenerys.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way. But however, George is a very clever man, and the writers, okay, yes, they make mistakes. They're clever people.
Well,
I mean,
in the books, there's so many prophecies in the books. Everyone keeps on saying, but the prophecies aren't coming true. I don't think they realise there's about 20 prophecies in the book, because George has some kind of weird obsession with prophecies.
He has a prophecy fetish.
So you've got the prophecy Cersei gets, where she's told that she'll have 3 children with the king, he'll have 20, and gold will be their crowns, and gold will be black gold will be their shrouds, or something like that.
Yeah.
So she knows all 3 of her children are going to be die. Something they left out in the show, but is in the book, is she's informed that she'll die with the hands of the Volonka around her neck, and Volonka is a little brother in Valyrian. That's why she's always hated Tyrion, not only because he's a dwarf, but also because she believes that she'll die by her little brother. Little does she know that Jaime is also her little brother, because he's the younger twin. So that's why everybody always thought Jaime would kill her. They left it on the show, but I guess it could also come true in the book, because the way he was embracing her, maybe like he could be embracing her with his hands like wrapped around her neck or something.
It was a little bit like that in the show when he was holding her face. It was, but I don't think they're really paying attention to the prophecies.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting if it ended like that in the book, because we're expecting her to die because someone murders her. So it would be a bit of a twist for her to actually die in someone's embrace. And then there's another. Daenerys gets about 50 prophecies told to her. You get the one where she's told when she'll see Khal Drogo again, when the mountains are flying in the wind like trees. No, when the mountains are flying in the wind like leaves, and the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and the sea runs dry. And then she also gets told one where she's told to not trust the perfume essential. I don't know what it's called, but essentially essential is the one that like looks after domestic matters in a medieval household. And the fact that Varys is always referred to as smelling nice in the book, like George really shoehorns the fact that Varys wears a lot of perfume, so obviously it's hinting towards that. She's also told to not trust the lion, which must be Tyrion at this point. And then there's a few other characters she's told not to trust, which only appear in the book. But there's one thing she's told in the book where she's told that death will come to her on a pale horse. And in the book, I think there's a plague that happens in Marine, and the reason why it starts in Marine is because a pale horse comes through the town and it's got a dead body on it, which is carrying the plague. But obviously the show has decided to take it and turn it into Arya arriving to Daenerys on a pale horse.
I don't want Arya to kill.
Yeah, I mean,
Daenerys.
it could be a Bible reference, because in the Book of Revelations, Death rides a pale horse.
It was beautifully, the cinematography when that horse came in was. I think Jon should kill Dany.
Yeah.
Either way, whatever happens, I feel that some fans are going to be disappointed, because they will make up, obviously, they've been saying their own ways to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine, for some reason, this just came into my head right now whilst I was listening to you talk about that. I can imagine Tyrion with a crossbow repeating the death of his father. It won't happen, but it'll be enjoyable to watch. Before we move on to other things, I just want to ask quickly, Clegane Bowl.
I hated it. I've always hated the fan theory of Clegane Bowl.
I
think it's a stupid fan. It's not even a fan theory. It's just what the fans wanted. It's like a stupid want by the fans. The show abided by it, and I don't think it will happen in the books.
I think it the whole Game Bowl that happened reflects the general problem that I'm having with season 7 and season 8, is that earlier seasons of Game of Thrones was all about the writing and the talking, and I would have enjoyed Clegane Bowl a lot more if they talked more.
Yeah.
Instead of just "Rah!" and then, stabbing each other. What if they had can you imagine that conversation? It would have been phenomenal.
I mean, I love the Hound as much as anyone, but I don't think he should have been brought back to life.
The fight.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, the fight itself reminded me of, the Family Guy fights where Peter fights the chicken. That's what it
Yeah.
reminded me of. And I
It
just feel
really
that's-
does, yeah.
I love the Hounds, but when he died, he should have just remained dead. And plus, I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong. I know neither of you have read the books, but someone who's listening might have. But I think Beric and Forrest are dead in the books. I think one of them dies bringing Cat back to life as Lady Stoneheart, and then another one of them dies at some point as well. So there's no one around to bring the Hound back to life, unless Melisandre makes a quick stretch to the wall to bring Jon back to life. And then she's like, I've got to go. I've got to go back to the Riverlands and bring the Hound back now.
Yeah.
So there we go. Game of Thrones. One more episode to go. Should we watch it live?
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
we'll watch it live. The final episode of Game of Thrones, and we'll have to talk about that next week. Now, just before we start the podcast today, a trailer came out. A trailer for season 5 of Black Mirror on Netflix. 3 episodes coming out in June. Miley Cyrus starred in the trailer. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Oh, I'm so looking forward. Yeah, Ruby,
What?
she's giving me a bit of a puzzled face there. Both Miley Cyrus and Anthony Mackie are in this one.
Anthony Mackie's in. I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
And the guy
I
who
love that
plays
man.
what's his face from Sherlock?
Don't look at me.
Oh, yeah. I
Martin
don't know why-
Freeman.
No.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
No, the other one.
Andrew Scott.
Moriarty.
Andrew Scott.
Andrew Scott, yeah.
He's an amazing actor.
Yeah.
In Fleabag, he was phenomenal.
It's going to be a 3-episode season this time. They did turn to 6 episodes. I think the problem with 6 episodes was there would always be 3 good ones and then 3 meh ones.
Nah.
So I'm glad they've gone back to 3 again, and that's coming out June the 5th.
June the 5th, we'll be watching that together as well. We need something to watch when Game of Thrones is finished. So thank you very much, Black Mirror, for being released at the perfect time.
Yeah.
Now, just before we move on to films, TV, breaking news this morning through the BBC. Jeremy Kyle's show has been axed after the death of a guest who took part. A gentleman called Steve Diamond was found dead on the 9th of May, and that was a week after the filming the show. So that's the first guest who has supposedly taken their life straight off the back of a Jeremy Kyle show recording, and it's just... The issue I've got is, yes, you need to cancel the show because you can't do things like that, but there's 2 issues I've got. The first one being, they always say on the show, and you always hear it, oh, if you need anything, we'll support you, we'll support you, we'll support you. I've seen on social media, now I can't verify the things, but there's been numerous reports from people who've worked for the show, and there's been some reports saying, oh, there was never any support networks there, those people were never supported, and there's others saying that, oh, there was lots of support, they're absolutely fine. So someone is trying to mess with the closure of this show, and I really, really hope there was support for the guests that were on, because if they weren't, then it's basically been running a circus for 14 years. The other thing as well, which is the bigger issue, and I think you guys have opinions on this, because I know at least you've watched this show.
Yeah.
You cancel this, but you don't cancel Love Island, where 2 of the people who formerly took part in it, Mike and Sophie, I believe, struggled with mental health issues after the show. Admittedly, yes, they had other issues going on with family bereavements and things like that, but if you cancel one, surely you've got to cancel the other. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, the most disgusting thing about both these shows, Jeremy Kyle takes the mick out of people struggling with family issues and turns like they always have a villain as well. Like if someone's been accused of something, when they come out on stage, they get booed. It's disgusting. I've always hated Jeremy Kyle and the way it turns the working class into caricatures.
Yeah, I've been watching it since it was always on at like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
when I used to wake up as a kid. But even as like a 6-year-old watching it, I was like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And I was 6 years old. It's just, but I've watched Love Island. I was a big fan at one point, and it needs to get cancelled.
Yeah, Love Island
It needs
is disgusting because of how vain it is. You've got people that go on there, they get judged by their appearance, they get their when they leave, their personal life is like looked at through a microscope, who they're going out with, what they're doing. You've got perfectly ordinary people walking into that villa. They spend 3 months in isolation where they only talk to people on the show. Then when they come out again, they're suddenly in the spotlight constantly.
And the other thing with that as well is, because I was talking to some gentlemen I do another podcast with earlier this morning, the blokes who go on there and the girls who go on there, when they go in, they'll have 120 or so followers on Instagram. They come out, they've got 1.2 million.
Yeah.
Like, how do you deal with that change without any mental health network support? I couldn't deal with that change on my own. I don't think anyone could, you know. Footballers, they struggle with it, but they normally get like mental health support from their clubs. These people are getting no mental health support whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, if you throw someone into a spotlight, what do you expect? It's absolutely bizarre. But it does say as well, in terms of just general TV networks itself, I can understand completely now why people are going to watch, you know, things on streaming services like Netflix and things like that, because why would we want to watch people who are basically being ridiculed and taken the mick out of for our entertainment? It's quite bizarre.
I think that it rings true of a general problem we're having in society right now, which is that we don't know how to handle the internet. Because if you think about history in general, we have thousands of years to develop things like, you know, the Industrial Revolution. But if you think about right at the start of the Industrial Revolution, no one had any idea what policies they should have, what laws, you know, about the coal, and people were living all near factories, and that was, you know, terrible for their health. I think if you think about it, we've only had the internet for a short amount of time, and I think that we're just now getting to grips with the fact that we need laws around the internet and social media. We need, you know, we need
accountability,
surveillance.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it can really damage, you know, society's mental health. It's a big thing, and I think we're only coming to terms with that now.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the issue where you've got trying to bring out stuff like that, but then also battle that against freedom of speech. I think what they should do is not have any restrictions on what you can or can't say, but have some kind of like, what do you call it? Like, you know, if you...
Well, you need to be held to account if you say something.
Yeah, held into account. That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, like if you were to like, I don't know, like cause someone to commit suicide like this, and you're held to account for your actions, like just as you would be in real life.
On a completely, well, not a different note, but I saw in the news this morning a girl in, I believe, Malaysia, a 15-year-old girl committed suicide because she put an Instagram poll and 69% of people voted for her to kill herself. Like, for goodness sake, have some accountability. The one thing, if there's one message you take away from this podcast, don't cyberbully people, and please think about what you post on the internet. I'm sure Jess and Ruby agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree, yeah.
We're going to move on to the world of film now, the big screen. And the sky is blue, water is wet, and Daniel Craig's hurt himself again. So James Bond is being delayed.
Yeah.
Jess, talk to us.
Well, they were filming in Jamaica for, what's it called, Shacklehand or something? Shatterhand?
I don't care at this point.
Shatterhand.
It's a really stupid name. I thought it was going to be a working title, as in, you know, when they give the project a little like nickname, but no, this is actually what the film's going to be called, which is ridiculous.
What is it?
Shatterhand.
That's definitely a sexual innuendo in some form or way.
And it's been confirmed that Rami Malek is the villain, which is interesting because I could have swore Christopher Waltz was going to be the main villain now because they introduced him in the last one. But oh well. They were filming in Jamaica and he slipped over and broke his ankle. Well, I don't think he's broken his ankle, but he's had some form of ankle injury. And he had to be flown to the US for treatment. This isn't new to Daniel Craig, though. He basically does it every single Bond film. I've got a list here of all his injuries. He had 2 teeth knocked out for Casino Royale. He lost a fingertip in Quantum of Solace and hurt his knee in Spectre.
I did not know he had lost teeth.
Yeah.
That makes him slightly less attractive.
So this was supposed to come out November 2019, but it's now going to be pushed back to April 2020.
So is Skyfall the only one he's not hurt himself in?
Yeah, it sucks that he lost a fingertip in Quantum of Solace, considering it was such a disappointing film. I can't even remember anything that happens, but I think he's riding a bike at one point. But
he lost his fingertip for nothing.
It's ironic. The only good film of the James Bonds in the recent years is the only one where he doesn't hurt himself. So now he's hurt himself in this. Shatterhand is probably going to be not very good. Now, last week, when I was absent, Macaulay and Jess were having a lot of chit-chat about Disney and their new schedule, and there's obviously some information about the Star Wars films, which Jess is going to present to us very nicely.
Well, it was a very confusing list because it was basically untitled Marvel film coming out this date, untitled Marvel film coming out that date. One thing we do know is it's going to be a new Star Wars trilogy, and I think I'm really confused at how they've laid it out, because I know there's a new trilogy coming out, but Rian Johnson's going to be in charge of one thing, and I think it's the trilogy. So he's directing the whole of that, even though The Last Jedi was the worst rated Star Wars film to have been released so far. And we've just had news that, speaking of the Game of Thrones writers, they are going to be writing the next Star Wars film. And whether this is part of Rian Johnson's trilogy or whether this is a standalone film or what, we don't know. But it's going to be released in 2022. And they will be writing it. So, yeah, let's not look forward to that.
Excuse me while I go jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
I've just got images in my head now of Finn just standing staring and then going mad and flying the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, don't understand. Are Disney trying to throw the franchise off a cliff? They sold the gaming rights to EA, of all companies. They've got Rian Johnson to direct the trilogy. They've hired the Game of Thrones writers, who are probably one of the worst, most hated people on the planet at the moment, to write the next film. What are they doing?
I hope it's good, because obviously the new ones from the Disney era have already come under critic.
They're refusing to release the Old anything related to the Old Republic, which are really critically acclaimed and fans absolutely love it. They won't release an Obi-Wan film, which everyone's looking forward to. They push back the Boba Fett film.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the new Star Wars films, the first Star Wars films I loved, and I think everyone loved the first one. I mean, it was basically a copy, but it was phenomenal. I think it was a real success. Similar to Endgame, I think they just got it right. They just did.
I have to disagree, because I personally hated Force Awakens because I felt like it was written like a fan fiction. But
yeah, but I think that even if something is written as a fan fiction, if it's done well and there's care put into it, go for it. Same with 50 Shades of Grey. If they do it well.
I've given up on the new trilogy, and I loved Rogue One. I loved Rogue One, and Rogue One is the only one that I have taken home as a DVD from the new films. I'm just going to leave it at that, though, because we are running out of time before we start arguing.
So let's move on as rapidly as we can now. Midsummer. I know Midsummer as Midsummer Murders, but Jess is going to talk about something completely different because she's not about 40 years old.
Yeah, Midsummer is the new film by the guy who directed Hereditary, Ari Aster. It's going to be... well, the trailers don't really reveal much. I think the storyline's going to be, you've got a couple, they're falling out a bit. His friends are like, yeah, she's a psychopath, just leave her. She's going through some stuff, so her mother says, oh, go to Sweden to the Midsummer Festival, you'll enjoy it. And they turn up, and there's kind of some weird, cult thing going on. The most interesting thing about this film was it's set in broad daylight, which I think is really cool for a horror film, because most horror films are set in the dark to make it a bit more spookier. So yeah, this should be really interesting.
Now, sticking on the theme of horror films, on Thursday, just a day after we recorded last week's podcast, a trailer came out of It Chapter 2, obviously based on the Stephen King books. And Jess is going to wrap up some information on It Chapter 2.
I'm going to breeze past this one because I haven't actually seen the first one, though it has been on my list for ages, and I do really want to see it. The book is basically split into two parts. You've got the first part where you've got the kids. It is basically a shape-shifting alien that feeds off fear. Basically what happened in the first film was, the first part of the book is that the kids realise that it feeds off fear, they're not scared of it anymore, they beat it up a bit, and then it goes down a hole and they live happily ever after. But then when they grow up as adults, they've been through some stuff, one of them's on drugs because he stayed in the area and he's just traumatised. And they decided to finish off the job, which is what this one is about. And it's got James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain in it.
Yeah, it's got a really good cast.
Yeah.
Really good cast.
And the trailer is creepy, really creepy. It's basically a little scene from the film rather than a trailer at all, and it's basically showing her going back to her old house, and you've got this grandma who very slowly starts getting like a bit weird, and you realise that she is it.
And do we know when chapter 2 is due out?
I've got it written down somewhere. Let's have a look. It's coming out the 6th of September.
Fantastic. So we can all go and watch it before we go back to uni.
Yeah.
Our final bit of film news, although it's not really film if you like, but Stan Lee, obviously he passed away in November, but his former manager, Kia Morgan, has been charged with elder abuse, 5 counts of abuse. They include false imprisonment, fraud, forgery, and it all came from an incident last summer, just a few months before Stan Lee passed away.
Yeah, this really upset me reading it.
This upset me.
Yeah.
Just don't
Apparently
do
it was
that.
after his wife died because she managed all their finances, which apparently happens to a lot of elderly celebrities.
Well, yeah, it happens to a lot of elderly people in general.
Yeah.
It's just when it happens to elderly celebrities, it like really sinks in. But it's so common
Yeah.
in care homes and stuff like that. They really get taken advantage
Yeah, this
of.
guy like waited for the family member that managed all his finances to die off, and then he decided to take over. Apparently he was selling his artwork and stuff without permission, using his signature to like sign off stuff.
I do really hope that this, actually does bring other cases into the spotlight in the real world, not just the celebrity world. I mean, you see things like this exposed on, like those mid-morning, like crime programs, like Locked Up and things like that. But for goodness sake, get it on the mainstream news. Get it, in the heads of people that this is unacceptable. So I do hope that, yes, despite this awful incident, that this will actually help people see that elder abuse is just not on worldwide.
Yeah.
That's what I really, really do hope. And, the estate of Stanley, it really shouldn't be messed with like that. A man who's contributed so much to the world, just don't do that to him. Moving on to gaming. Now, I saw this in Jess's notes for the podcast this week, and I was very confused. Netflix at E3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very confused.
So basically, they've already got a Stranger Things 3, the game coming out. So I'm not sure when it's coming about. It's kind of like a little retro thing. It looks like a little Game Boy style game. But they're coming to E3, but not just to show that. Apparently they've got some other stuff that's being based off their original content as well. Now, Netflix have never produced a game before, and I don't see them doing anything like AAA or anything big. So I think these are going to be like little mobile games and stuff like that.
I was confused because I thought it meant that they were going to put some sort of gaming thing on Netflix.
Yeah.
Like how Bandersnatch was it Bandersnatch in...
Yeah.
Black Mirror. I haven't watched it, but I know it had a sort of...
And the Bear Grylls thing as well.
Yeah, it had a sort of interactive element.
Yeah, they might be introducing some more of those. We'll see. I think it's quite interesting. I mean, a lot of the original content can be quite poorly written, but you've got other gems in there. You've got... I particularly liked Altered Carbon. I liked Ozark. You've got... some other stuff, Daredevil, but that's been cancelled now.
Oh no.
Yeah. And you've got quite a few. To be honest, I haven't seen any. Oh, Annihilation was a really good Netflix film, but apart from that, I can't really remember any decent ones.
Now, do you want to speak, Ruby? Go on.
I was just making a face because I know all too well about Netflix original films.
Oh yeah, I mean there are some stinkers. Like
Stinkers,
some of them are quite awful.
Now, imagine a world where you can ride around in Wild West. You can be a cowboy, and you can go into your saloons, and you can play poker, and you can ride with people on horses. You can
Keep
do
going.
This now.
I want a full hour of
Do you
this.
want a full hour of this?
Yes.
I wish we could. No.
I'm gonna have to cut you off there.
Red Dead Redemption 2 online is no longer in beta mode.
Yeah, the game got released in. I don't know whether it wasn't out when the game got released, but I think the online launched in November.
That's
but that
correct.
was in beta mode, and everyone's been complaining because there was nothing in it. You basically go around a map and you do like bits and bobs, but there's nothing to do apart from that. I've seen some quite funny people doing impressions of Arthur and what's his face, Dutch, and those have been entertainment. But apart from that, the online's been very disappointing, and there's been quite some controversy over apparently Rockstar downgraded the graphics of the single player to try and get the multiplayer to run properly.
Oh, dear.
But now it's left beta, and there's going to be an absolutely huge update where they're trying to turn it a bit like how the Grand Theft Auto 5 one is, where you've got heists, you've got little side missions.
And you can do the small things. You can actually play poker. I wasn't taking a
Yeah,
minute.
you can play poker. You can do what you can do in the single player, where you explore the world and stuff will happen. Like in the single player, if you just like go down the road, you'll encounter someone whose horse has like collapsed and fallen on top of them, and you can ride them back to their house.
Do you still have I don't know if you know, do you still have the animal and nature renders in the Red Dead Online? Because I know in GTA Online they had to take that out. So there was no wild animals or anything like that in
I'm
GTA
pretty sure the
Online.
wild animals are still in it.
That's good, because that's the one disappointment with GTA Online
Yeah.
I had.
Well, I think Red Dead Redemption's wildlife is a bit more. It needs to be in there
Exactly,
to create
yeah,
the
that's what I
world
was
rather than
thinking.
Grand Theft Auto. They can do without it.
Oh yeah, they should do it with cars
Yeah,
instead.
whereas the ecosystem in Red Dead Redemption plays a huge part in it, especially when you have to like go out hunting and stuff. But yeah, whether this will actually kick off, I don't know, because the online has done terrible compared to the single player. Which, it's quite funny considering EA said single players are dying and no one wants to play them anymore. How weird is that?
You're not letting that go, are you?
No,
EA,
I'm really
EA
not.
manages to be wrong on everything.
EA still pushed that even after Battlefield 5 was a failure because it did terrible in sales. Battlefront 2 did terrible in sales. Anthem's done quite well, but Apex Legends has done quite well. Anthem was the one that did terrible as well. Yet they still keep on saying people don't want to play single players, which is weird considering God of War won Game of the Year, and
Don't get me started on EA.
and
I will go on
Sony
for
have sold
hours.
so many consoles due to their exclusive single player games. How weird
It's
is
because
that?
EA are spending all their time fixing faults on FIFA. That's
Yeah.
why they can't do anything.
And also because EA
Yeah.
keep on pushing their engine on all their game companies. They force them to use the same engine, which apparently doesn't work very well with linear single player games.
EA ruined The Sims for me.
Yeah,
There's my statement.
Childhood ruined.
and they've ruined Star Wars with the Star Wars games as well.
And FIFA's just not very good anymore either. So
That's their new job title, is ruining childhood since
So,
2000 and
With
bollocks.
Yeah, so before we finish, with Red Dead Redemption Online, I don't know whether they'll carry on trying to force the online down everyone's throats, even though we don't want it, or whether they'll actually listen to people and decide and say, okay, you know what, you want your single player DLC, we'll release your single player DLC.
Just before we finish, I will just force a little bit of music news down your throat. There wasn't really anything this week or last week, hence why I wasn't particularly here. The one thing I will say, Brian May has come out and said that Queen have not received a single penny yet from Bohemian Rhapsody. That's understandable. And the other thing as well, Billie Eilish, who Jess doesn't like, but I do, she's come out in a statement in a new advertising campaign for Calvin Klein and basically said, I wear baggy clothes because it hides, things from the public, and obviously it hides, people's, ability to build an image of her, which I think is pretty cool, actually.
I mean, it was stupid.
What a
how
legend.
It was stupid how she had to spell that out. I think it was quite obvious.
I mean,
the reason why she was wearing the baggy clothes.
At the end of the day, it's her choice. People can see what
Yeah.
she wants to see. Just because other artists,
that's-
wear like spandex and crop tops and things like that, doesn't mean she has to.
Yeah, that's another thing. I hate how people were judging her for that. Like, she can wear what she wants. She's a grown ass adult. she can do what she wants. Wear what she wants.
That's the message.
It's no one's business.
Yeah. That's the message to take from this podcast, people. No matter who you are, you're a grown-ass adult and you can wear what you want and do what you want.
Apart from EA.
Yeah, apart from EA.
You can't wear EA stuff. Shall we leave it there?
Yeah, I'd say so. We've gone way over, I think.
Sorry. That's just my technique.
But nonetheless, we hope you enjoyed listening to the Entertainment Room podcast. Thank you very much, Ruby, for being a first-time guest. I hope that you will come back and be a guest again.
I can rant about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, maybe you can come back next week. Maybe we can bring everybody back. We
Yeah.
can have you, Mac, Holly, Dan.
Yes, let's do it.
You know, let's bring in HK and Rhiannon as well for the non-Game of Thrones. Let's have the biggest podcast we've ever had.
Rhiannon's been feeling quite sad that we've left her out of quite a few episodes.
Sorry, Rhiannon.
We might have to bench me so she can come back. Fantastic. Thank you very much for listening. It's really appreciated. Do come back next week on Wednesday for another Entertainment Room podcast.